everyone. I'm Linda Nickell, and welcome to the Happiness Hour. My goal here is to help us all connect, inspire, and create. And every week, a new guest is here to share their work, inspire a little creativity, and help you improve your photography skills. The schedule for upcoming presentations is on my website at lindanickell.com. And under Happiness Hour, you'll find the links to previous episodes on my YouTube channel. I would love it if you would help us by subscribing. Tonight's guest is Paul Malinowski. Paul was my guest in session number 84, where he presented his moon photography project called Lunar Eclipse. And you can find it on the Happiness Hour YouTube channel. Paul is a fine art photographer based in Colorado, whose portfolio includes portraiture, nature, abstracts, and architectural photography. The underlying theme of his images are best described by the tagline on his website, visually interpreting the present moment. You can check out his images and blog on his website, paulmalinowskiphotography.com. And in tonight's presentation, cracking the code of photo competitions. Are you intimidated to apply to photo contests, or do you just think that photo competitions are a waste of time or scams? Paul has had a lot of experience with photo contests, and he's going to help answer your questions and offer advice to help you navigate all the contest options out there and find one that fits your interests. So welcome back to the Happiness Hour, Paul.
Thank you.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. Fabulous. Especially this is happy hour. So I brought my wine. I assume everybody else is. But.
Well, it was funny because someone asked me, where did you get Happiness Hour? And, it started as a joke that we said, oh, we should do happy hour. And after I said it a couple of times, I said Happiness Hour, and it just kind of stuck, and we couldn't come up with a better name. So that's why we call it the Happiness Hour. But I'm thrilled that you're here with your little glass of vino. Any projects that you're working on that you want to share with us? What are you doing? Are you doing another moon project, or what photography projects are in the works for you?
Well, really, the biggest one I've got going on right now, I'm doing my first ever art festival. Okay. And it's a pretty big one here in the Denver area. It was juried, it was a competition. And I was selected. And from what I understand, pretty tough competition. So I'm really pleased about it. But I fought doing outdoor art festivals for years, because everybody said how much work it was, and it did look like a lot of work. But I have sort of a bucket list goal of being in the Cherry Creek Art Festival, which is here in Denver, and it's probably one of the top 3 in the nation for outdoor art festivals. I've never missed in the 28 years it's been in existence of going to it. I've been a volunteer photographer, doing random portraits, things like that, for many years for it. And I want to be in it. And that's my ultimate goal. But to be in it, you have to have a booth shot of a current festival that you're in. And this one, for some reason, didn't require a booth shot, and I got in on my merits. So I will be taking booth shots, and hopefully next year or the year after, I can make Cherry Creek Art Festival. So that's my big project, because the first one of those art festivals you do, you're buying the canopy, you're buying the grid walls, you're getting set up with this thing here, the square, and probably didn't show very well. Right. This, and all the good stuff that second festival you don't have to worry about. Oh, and then I realized, oh wait, I have to show art. So I'm having like 60 pieces printed. I'm doing a lot of metal and wood, so that I didn't have to do framing, and so I'm getting there. It'll be middle of September, but it is a lot of work.
It's 60 pieces sounds like a really expensive little project. Good luck with that.
Well, I'm doing smaller stuff. I think that'll sell better than the big, couple large pieces. But and also because I'm a member of a particular photography organization here, I get substantial, and I mean substantial discount from a couple of the professional printers here in town. And so, I can do a 50% markup and, they'll be extremely affordable.
That sounds great. I saw a question pop up and I was curious, how big are your pieces? What's the smallest? What's the largest?
The smallest will be, not counting, I'll also have matted prints,
Okay.
but and two different sizes there. But in terms of like a finished product, the smallest will be like 10 by 10 square blocks. And my biggest will probably be 20 by 30.
Okay.
So I'm not having anything really huge. Someone that gave me advice years ago said, get one piece that's like, just 10 feet by 20 feet and put that in the front of your booth and charge $20,000 for it so nobody will buy it. And it just draws people in. But I decided not to go that crazy.
Yet. I was like,
yeah.
So Texas, we Texans like to go into Colorado. It's not that far for us. When is that festival? In September?
September 17th and 18th, I think. It's a Saturday and Sunday, typical festival of the 2 days. And, that is our driest month of the year. So fingers crossed, we don't get a monsoon or winds or stuff like that. But it should be, it's got some really good artists in it. So.
Okay, well, best of luck.
Thanks.
Yeah, and if anybody does end up showing up in front of Paul's tent or canopy, just say, hey. Well, good luck. All right, let's go.
I'll give a happiness hour discount.
Ooh.
Yeah. 10% right 10%. There.
There you go. You ready to
mm-hmm.
Just a little bit of, so it was interesting. People either love contests or people hate contests. Mm-hmm. And there's not really any middle ground. It's kind of interesting for me because I got quite a few little snippy messages about how much I hate contests and it's all about a popularity and that's okay too. And then there are diehards that really benefit from being in a contest and they take it very seriously. And they learn a lot about, their work and how they can improve it. So if you don't mind, tell us what you know and maybe I would like to persuade people to join them. I personally don't do them. But I really do encourage people to put their work out there, and contests are a good place to kind of see where you rank, and they also kind of inspire you to try a little harder. So
yeah, and obviously I'm coming from the standpoint that they're worthwhile. They're worthwhile, but you should target them, and that's what I'll be talking about. And yeah, I saw that comment about popularity on your Instagram.
That's why I was really excited when you and I were talking about what can you come and talk, because I wanted you to come back and you're like, well, I could talk about this and this, and you mentioned contests. I'm like, that's what I want you to talk about, because this is something that will go on YouTube, and people outside of this room may stumble across it because they're trying to figure out, do I want to, what are the tips? So I think I was excited to have you talk about it. So, all right, I'm going to give you the screen.
So cracking the code of photo competitions. And by the way, all of my information here, I have my website, my Instagram page, and my email address, a Gmail account. So everything is Paul Malinowski Photography. So if you know my name, you've got it. I also have a Facebook business page, but I'm so kind of done with Facebook and playing the algorithm. I don't even bother putting it. I do post once a week, but I don't know. I'm kind of over them. So let me give you a little bit of background with my experience with competitions. So first of all, I'm a serious hobbyist, but I'm not a professional. And I consider myself a good photographer, but not a great photographer. So my guess is I think I've described a lot of the folks in here. I know, actually, I recognized a couple of the names. A couple of folks I just started following on Instagram probably just followed me, and I've seen some great stuff. So I know there's really good photographers in this group. When you first asked me, and I think I sent you something and said, well, I think I've been in about 40 competitions since 2015. So when I was doing this, I wound up going back and actually counting every single one. So I've been in about 80, I've been accepted into about 80 competitions since 2015. And I did kind of start to go crazy in the early years there, 2015 through 2018, 19, something like that, and entered a lot of competitions. I don't now. I target the competitions I want. And I could tell you that I've been in competitions successfully, ranging from about as far east as you can go in the United States. I forget the name of the town. It's in Long Island. It's on the east coast of Long Island to San Francisco, so east to west, and then from Oregon to Louisiana with stops in between like Chicago, Houston, Carolinas, Taos, New Mexico, Wyoming, and a lot here in Colorado. And I know a lot of your folks are from Texas, and Texas has a lot of competitions, and I'll show you where to find a lot of those. So what are the expected outcomes today, or hopefully the outcomes that you'll get from this is why you should apply to competitions, understanding where to target your application. I really don't recommend, well, I'll just send in 50 of these and hope, it sticks on the wall. Don't do that. It's waste of time. It gets discouraging if you don't get in. So don't do that. But I'll show you how to target your applications. I increased my hit rate, meaning the success rate, from about 10 to 15% those first few years to now it's about 50% of all the competitions I've entered, I'd say in the last 3 years. Obviously, I do less because I target them, but I do recommend at the beginning being a little bit liberal with your interpretation of what you think would be a good competition to enter. And I can't guarantee success, but I can guarantee that I will help you greatly increase your chances of getting accepted into competitions. So the agenda, let's talk about what the agenda will be here. So, and some of this is real short, quick. Forms of competition, forms of media in competitions. I'll explain what that means. Why enter competitions, competition platforms, tips for a successful entry, some other considerations, some examples of some of the images I've had that have made it and inexplicably not made it. And then we're going to do just real quick a live entry in real time. You're going to help me figure out. I've found a competition to enter. The deadline happens to be tonight. I'm very lucky that I ran across this one. So let's go. And like I say, this will be really pretty quick. But first, a definition of a competition. To me, it's any call for entry that accepts only a limited number of entries. So anything less than the total number of entries is a competition, right? So what are the forms of a photo competition? Well, it can be in a gallery. A lot of galleries will run competitions. You have a really good one there, I think, in Austin. A.O. Smith, I think, is the name of the gallery, Melinda, if I'm not mistaken. they do 1 or 2 shows a year that are open competitions, and you should look into them. Really good gallery. So galleries tend to be private facilities, and then look for what are called art centers. And art centers tend to be public facilities, whether they're tied to a municipality or they might be tied to a nonprofit organization, but they do a lot of calls for entry. Arts festival, I just talked about this, that most art festivals are juried, and you can't just send in your application fee and be accepted, at least the good ones, it's my experience. It could be a publication, like Linda got hers accepted. I got accepted into a publication 2 years ago done by a group called Lenswork, and it was for a book, a landscape book that they did. And not only, and that's actually one of the images I'll show you, not only was that image accepted, it was used as the very last, it's sort of a coffee table book, and it was used as the very last image in the book, which I've been told the first and the last entries are their favorites. Calendars, look for competitions that have calendars. I live in a city that does an annual calendar that, you're supposed to take the photo somewhere in the community, and it's a fun competition. Now there's a lot of online exhibits and competitions. Some of the international ones we'll talk about a little later, but even a lot of the ones that used to be in person are doing some online ones. So those are, they can be really good, because then you don't have to go to the trouble of framing and shipping and all of that good stuff. And then there's competitions sometimes to license. I actually entered one once where it was an art consultant company, and they license the use of images to their clients. And so I applied for that, and actually was considered a semifinalist. I went to the final round and they didn't select, but that's fine. So what are the forms of media in a photo competition? So there's going to be 3 types of competitions. There's going to be a photography only competition, or there'll be an all media that includes photography competition. And by all media, I mean, it could be sculpture, any 2D, 3D. So, 3D is sculpture, 2D is watercolor, paintings, drawings, etc. And then some, rather oddly, will do all media, and then they exclude photography. There are still some competitions out there that don't consider photography fine art for whatever reason. But also, on the other extreme, photography has become so popular and so competitive that I know there's one that I really like to apply to every year. I think I've been in maybe 75% of the years. They had so many great photography entries, they actually broke it out into an all media excluding photography show, and then a photography only show. So beware, look for those. Actually, let me say, my favorite is the all media including photography. And that might seem counterintuitive, but for some reason, less people proportionally, photographers seem to apply to those as opposed to photography only competitions. And I find the photography only competitions to be overwhelming, thousands of entries, whereas the all media don't, for whatever reason. And I have a much higher success rate with that type of competition. So why apply to a photo competition? Well, when you're accepted, it does give you some street cred. It sort of pads the resume if you're looking to have a resume, but it just gives you some street cred. You're able to brag about it. When you're accepted, it's a rush. It really is. There's nothing like getting that acceptance email. And, it makes you feel good, and it gives you self-confidence that, gee, I'm on the right track. And then it allows, once the work is being exhibited, whether it's online or in person, and some do both at the same time, but it allows your work to be seen by others. It's nice to look at your own work, and I like to look at my own work, but I like other people to look at my work and hopefully enjoy it, or at least give me some candid feedback. If it got in, somebody thought it was good, but I especially enjoy if it's in person. I like to go, especially there's usually an opening reception, and I like to go and hang back, be near my piece, and then listen to what people say about it. And 9 times out of 10, people are going to say, "Oh, that's really nice," But I also, you got to have a thick skin, and somebody will say, "How the hell did this make it in?" And I appreciate that. And just attending an opening reception is really fun, especially when it's in a gallery or a nice art center. We have an art center in Pueblo, Colorado here that is just an incredible facility, the nicest art facility I've ever seen. And so I love being there. And I love attending the opening receptions. They're big. Some of these places make it a really big deal. You get free food and free wine, and that I'm not going to pass up, of course. So, and then it gives you a qualified indication of the quality of your work. And why do I have qualified in parentheses? Well, it's because it means whoever juried the show really, really likes it. And I'll talk about that here in a minute. So what happens though when you're not accepted? Well, it teaches you the virtue of persistence, and then the vice of cursing out loud. And when you get the rejection email, I've been known to question the organization's intelligence, and not to them, just to myself, but out loud. So my caveat is that an image that's accepted into one show will not necessarily even ever make another show again. And vice versa. And I can tell you from experience, I mean, took a photo, I knew that was a winner, I sent it in, got accepted, sent it in to 6 more shows and not accepted. Like, why is that? Well, not all judges think alike, or they have similar tastes, as we know. I mean, music is the same way. Your best friend may like, pop music, and you may be into classical music. So that's the same with jurors, and it means absolutely nothing that a particular judge didn't accept your image, and doesn't mean they didn't like it. And I want to point out too, some of these shows will get maybe say 500 entries, right? And they're only hanging 50, so 10%. So the judge, I've attended a lot, and this will be one of the tips I tell you here. Go to juror talks, go to judge talks, and to a T, they'll all say on first pass, I had, let's say if there's 300 entries, I had 200 to accept. And they're only allowed, say, 50 in that show. So they have to go like, a third time through, a fourth time through, a fifth time through. So because it wasn't in there, it didn't mean they didn't like it. They may love it. But it also may be a matter of, and again, judges have told me this. Well, maybe I had too many landscape and I wanted more portrait. I love that landscape one, but I had to get one more portrait, so the portrait one might not have been their favorite. But anyways, so I get this question a lot. So should photo competitions cost money? And I've heard on podcasts, this drives me nuts, and some really good podcast people will tell you, never enter a photo competition that you have to pay to enter. That's wrong, in my opinion. Definitely wrong. So why does a photo competition cost, and what should it cost? Well, as they say, legit competitions cost the sponsor money. Well, what are the charges? These platforms, and this is what I'm going to show you, these platforms charge you a fee to run your contest. Basically, these platforms are doing the marketing for you. They're accepting the entries, etc. That costs money. They don't do that for free. If it's a gallery, there's space costs. There might be outside marketing that's done besides just the platform. The juror usually gets some sort of a stipend. It's usually not a lot, but they'll get some stipend. And if it's a really good juror, they may pay to have, the sponsor may pay to have them travel to the opening reception, because typically jurors give a talk at the opening reception. The reception itself, all that, it's free to us in the audience, but it ain't free to the sponsor. So, and then some of these, especially the art center ones, it's a revenue generator for them. It may be the biggest revenue generator of the year. I'm really familiar. I've been, I think 4 years now. There's Conroe, Texas. Some of you in the Houston area does a really, really good show. It's called the Madeline Now International. And they're a nonprofit organization. They've got a beautiful gallery that's on the National Register of Historic Buildings. And this is a big revenue generator for them. So, they have to charge money. So what does it typically cost to enter? This won't make sense until I put actual numbers to it, but X dollars for Y number of entries with Z per image over above the minimum number of images. So what does all that mean? Well, here's a fairly typical one. There'll be a $35 entry fee for a minimum number of entries, which is usually 1 to 3 images. And then something like $5 typically for each additional entry up to the maximum, I think I meant maximum, the maximum allowed, which will be typically 3 to 6. I've seen some competitions will do unlimited maximum. And basically that is so that hopefully you'll just keep plunking down another image. I mean, it basically doesn't cost them anymore, but if you decide to put 10, well, I think I have actually here an example. So thus, for a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 6 entry competitions, because most competitions do have a maximum, the fee would be $50. It's that $35 base fee plus $5 for the 3 additional images, total of 6. So you'd have $50, right? To me, that's a very, very reasonable amount. And that's a very typical amount. All right, competition platforms. So here's where I think you can start getting some good information. Most competitions have a third-party platform. It would be tough for, again, say the Conroe Art League to run their own competition where you submit your images to them. I mean, on what? Dropbox, I suppose, but that doesn't give you a lot of good information. So they'll use these third-party platforms. So here's the ones I'm familiar with. This one's my favorite one. This is, if you get nothing else out of today, go to Call for Entry, and their nickname is Cafe, callforentry.org. Ironically, they happen to be out of Denver, but just ironically, but they seem to have a lot of competitions west of the Mississippi, a lot in Texas. Colorado and Texas competitions seem to dominate the Cafe website. That's where we're going to do our sample here. Now, I want to point this one out. There's a very similar sounding platform called Call for Entries. They go by C4E. Not sure how that came about, but it's Call for Entries plural.com as opposed to callforentry.org. So if someone says, hey, go to call for entry, it's good. To me, it's just not quite, it's a little, I don't know. They have some really, really big contests, and that's good. But, I prefer more either regional or something that I've got a chance to get into. And then this is a very good one. This is a little different one. It's called Smarter Entry. So just go to smarterentry.com and poke around there, and you'll see whatever contests are currently active. That's what all of these do. They'll have a list, and you'll see that. And some of them are what are called closed at submission versus open until deadline. And what that means is, say, call for entry cafe is a closed at submission. So tonight, when I submit my 3 entries, that's it. I'm done. I can't go back. I can't change it. Totally done. On Smarter Entry, one of the things I like about those is you can keep changing it until the absolute minute of the deadline. So that's kind of nice. I've always liked that about Smarter Entry, because inevitably, the day after you submit, you take the best shot in the world that you've ever taken, right? So then there are what are called first party platforms, and those are where you apply directly to the sponsor. And geez, nice spelling there. I must have been on my 3rd class of wine for sponsor, but anyways, everybody knew what that word was, right? So for example, these are bigger organizations. North American Nature Photographers Association, they have a big annual contest called Showcase. Really good competition, really tough competition, but really good. Audubon Society. So you just go to their website directly and you apply. So National Geographic, same thing. So now let's get into some specific tips, okay? And first, have a sip of wine. That's my first tip. Always have a sip of wine.
You're okay.
Okay, follow the rules. This seems really basic, but so one of the things and you're going to see, I've got a tip in here about going to juror talks. And one of the things I've learned is they look for someone that didn't follow the rules so that they can eliminate an image without having to fret over it. And apparently it's a fairly high rate. So for example, almost every competition will have an eligibility requirement. So there's some, I know there's, like in Texas, there's a couple of competitions where you have to be a Texas resident, okay? And one time I missed that, and I applied, dummy, gets kicked out, right? So I'm not a Texas resident. We have that in Colorado and some of the ones. So look and see. And then if there's a theme, really read about what they're looking for in a theme. And again, jurors looking to throw out immediately as many images as possible. So if you got something that doesn't match the theme, they're going to throw them out. So you have to really think about, does this fit the theme? And not all competitions have themes. A lot of them are just what are called open theme. And that can be just whatever your best shot is. Sizing. Here's another one. Now, the nice thing about, I think actually all the platforms I gave that are third party, they have sizing requirements. And if it isn't the right size, I don't think it'll even upload it to their site. But be careful if you're on a first party platform and they want 2,000 pixels on the long side, not to exceed 5 megabytes. If you're 5.5 megabyte file size, they'll throw it out because, they've got a reason to throw something out, okay? Date taken, watch the rules. A lot of competitions will tell you 2 years seems to be the norm, that you can't submit anything that was taken more than 2 years prior. Cafe makes you state in your application the year you took it. And that's available to the juror to look. And I suppose on some of these where not the really high powered ones like National Geographic, they'll ask for your metadata if you get accepted. So don't fudge that. Just, I'm sure you've got great stuff within that period anyway. So here's one that, boy, I think they look for people who purposely miss this. They purposely look for it. File naming convention. There's some of them have really specific ways that you are to name the file that you're submitting. And then you can have a title, which is different than the file name. So make sure you read that part of the rules. Make sure you have no identification, no watermark. If there's a watermark, a signature, something that reveals your name, it gets booted out, as well it should. All of these contests that I know of are anonymous. So, and the person that said about popularity contests, there's probably some competitions where it's not completely anonymous, and yeah, that can happen. My photo club, I belong to Lone Tree Photo Club here in Denver area, and yeah, you can tell whose photograph is whose, and so those are popularity contests. But go beyond your local photo club. Manipulation. Some of them have requirements that you cannot manipulate, which means Photoshop compositing or cloning, especially the really big ones like NANPA, National Geographic. You got to be really careful, or they allow it, but you have to state what it is that you did. So all of these have a prospectus, and you'll see the one that's in the sample. Read it. Very important. Create a Lightroom export preset that has like the sizing, the file size, at some of this, and then you don't have to worry about, gee, did I do this right? So I have one for cafe, for example. Tip number 2, research. So find a good match. Not every competition will serve your purpose. Look for the sponsor, the venue, for their style, their genre, etc. And the way to do that is go to their website, okay? Look at what their mission statement is. Look at the About Us statement. Look at if they're showing past exhibits. Are they, like we've got an art center here in Fort Collins, which is just northern part of the state. Great art center, really good photography place. And you know what? It's all super, super edgy stuff. And I don't do much super edgy. So I think I applied there 4 or 5 times way back when, never got in. I thought, God, I got great stuff. And then I'd look at theirs, I go up there and I take a look and like, God, my stuff is so much better. And well, it's prettier, but it wasn't what they're looking for. So, and then most competitions will tell you who the juror is. And by the way, juror, judge, curator, I know there's subtle differences between them all, but I'm using them interchangeably, and most competitions do. So that's the person who selects the images, and research them ahead of time. Are they a painter? Again, these all media ones that include photography rarely have a photographer judge. They're usually a watercolor painter, an oil painter, who may or may not know something about photography. I like when they don't, because I kind of feel like I can kind of see, I research them and okay, that's a pastel person. And so they probably like soft images, what their style is, what their genre is. Now, I went to a juror talk once who said, people will research me and they'll try and imitate me, and I throw those out immediately. Well, afterwards, I walked the show, and out of 50, she did a lot of like abstract pastels, and out of the 50 pieces she had up there, 46, 47 of them were abstract pastels. So I think it's just, and she had a couple, that didn't match her style at all, but I think that was more like, gee, I better take a couple. Don't, and she's right, don't imitate exactly what they do. They'll catch on to that. But if there's hints of that style, you can use topaz to make a photograph a little more impressionistic. So if you got someone who's a judge who's more of an impressionist painter, might go that way, okay? And there's should you copy your style. So tip number 3 on the images that you submit. So again, so many jurors at the juror talks that I've gone to have said something has to pop after they eliminate all the ones that didn't follow the rules. And maybe after they go through the first go round and they've got 100 more than what they're allowed to put in the show, they go back and they look for what popped. What is it that popped out? So, you may have a really nice image, but does it pop? And by that, it can be something like, does it convey an emotion? Did you look at it and go, something that really brought an emotion on? Is there a story in it that would make a judge, to have to think about your image? The more they have to look at your image, the better. Is there something really, really unique about the subject matter? Again, if you've got the same thing that everybody else does, find a unique vantage point of it. Maybe it's something color. I've been told by judges that color really pops, and it's something that makes them take a second look. I personally like to do black and white, and I've been pretty successful, but I certainly understand why vivid color is something that's important. Before you submit the image, pay attention to the detail. Another thing I've learned from judges is they look for things like, are there blown highlights, the technical stuff? Are there distractions in there? Is there a little dust spot? A dust spot, I know one juror once said that there's a dust spot out, totally out. And, I get that. I totally, for sharing on Instagram, who cares? But if you're trying to get into a show where only 10% of the submitted entries get in, a dust spot is a legit reason to not be accepted. Border Patrol, I learned this from a guy who does a lot of jurying, and in fact, it was at a show. And he goes around the edges of an image, if you don't know what that means, to Border Patrol. And that's where apparently, and he's right, most of us make our mistakes. We leave a dust spot around the border, or we leave a highlight, or, just the one pixel of a branch that we forgot to clone out is showing in there. And for him, and my guess is a lot of jurors, that will take you out of contention. Now, here's something. So like I say, a lot of these will say 3 images, right? I diversify my image submissions unless it's an actual theme. So although, I'm sort of semi-contradicting myself, but let's say they allow 5 images. And it's an impressionist person, does impressionist painting. So I'll have maybe 3 images that sort of fit that genre, and then 2 others totally off the wall, because and maybe totally different subject matter, but don't make all your submissions variations of the same one, I guess is the way, that's probably the way I should word this. Make it different enough that, if you had all 5 of the same and the juror didn't like one, they don't like all 5 then, okay? So give yourself a better chance by varying that. Last tip here is reverse engineering. Attend the juror talks, see what they say, because they'll tell you what it was that attracted them to might just be the top 3 winners. Some of them will walk with you around and say what they like. It's well worth it. Go to the exhibits, assuming you live somewhere where you can attend the exhibits, or go online and look at the exhibits and do some reverse engineering. What do you think made that? Go back to the prospectus, and that doesn't help you with that competition, but it may help you see, I did this a lot. I'm a little weird, and so I did all this reverse engineering. Miscellaneous tips: a single image versus a series. You vary the style versus consistent style. I talked about that. Find local regional competitions. I'm not saying avoid national, but you generally have a better, a Texas only or a Southwest competition. Avoid some international competitions. I'm gonna be a little careful since this is recorded and this will go on YouTube, but there was an article done a couple of years ago by a photo magazine that some of these international competitions are scams. They'll show a whole list of impressive sounding jurors, and they've got black and white headshots, and they have names like Francois, and they're European, and we've now found out that those jurors had their headshots stolen, and they were not jurors for the competition. So be careful of that. If there is an international competition, look for that there's a real human being behind it, and that maybe they're sponsors, maybe B&H or Tamron, something like that. That usually means they're legitimate. And here's some of my favorites. Again, that lens work. They do an annual publication. It's a competition. It's really good organization. It's fun to see a photo in a book. Praxis Galleries, one in Minneapolis. They're done through Smarter Entry. And although it's in person, they frame it for you, which is nice. Southeast Center for Photography is one I've had some in before, again, through Smarter Entry. Pennsylvania Center for Photography, Smarter Entry. I don't know why I've got all these Smarter Entry. I use Cafe. And well, I know I'm running out of time, and you can do a whole thing on artist statement, but a lot of these will ask you to do a statement, and I vary it every time. I have a base template I use, and depending on the show, I customize it, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Make sure you keep your artist statement anonymous. Don't say, yeah, last year I was in this show. I mean, they could figure it out. And again, it's supposed to be completely anonymous. Be careful of rights given up. Make sure you maintain your copyright. Make sure deadline dates are realistic. When is shipping acceptance, should you get accepted? You'd hate to be accepted and then realize, wait, I have to have this in there next week. It's not even framed, and forget it, don't apply. Pricing, there's a whole thing on pricing, but let me just tell you that the best way to price is the same way you price your house, market. I know everybody's sitting there, but gee, I've got X amount in my frame and shipping and all that. Well, guess what? When you go to sell your house, does a buyer care what your mortgage balance is? Does a buyer care that you put $100,000 in repairs in the last 5 years? No, it's market. It's not easy to do. I get that. You can fall back on your costs in there and then do a little markup. That's okay. But know your demographics. If you do get into a show, you don't want to be embarrassed by being the lowest or the highest price. So know what those are. So here's the examples. So very first show I was ever in was this image. It's called the Old Drive-In. And this is in a place called the San Luis Valley in Colorado, where I do a lot of photography. And what I researched the juror. First show I ever applied. I knew to research. It was an art history professor at Colorado State University. And he did a lot of Western Americana photographs. And I thought, okay, if this is an Americana, I don't know what is, right? And so this is an old outdoor drive-in. it was called The Frontier. And what I liked, it also tells a story. The for sale sign, you can't really see here, but the for sale sign, this is not only abandoned, but the for sale sign is abandoned too. So yeah, this got accepted. And I thought, gee, this is easy. You just send this in, and it doesn't really work that way. This image has been into a number of competitions. Again, sort of the story here, the Lonesome Road. This is in rural Northeast Oregon, on the Oregon-Idaho-Washington border. Just came across this as a really isolated road, but that was cool. This was maybe the second show I ever entered, and it was a landscape show. It was a competition for national parks. It was the centennial year of national parks, I believe. So it would have been 2016. And juried by a very famous landscape photographer here named John Fielder. And this won second place. It was a national competition. And so, you know, that's why I love black and white, and I love shadows and light. And this is the one that made the book, the Lenswork book, called Our Planet Earth last. And I think one of the reasons it was the last image in the book is because the dead end sign. This is actually really very, very close to that outdoor drive-in theater that I had. It's just sort of on the other side of the mountains. And here's one that I entered in several competitions, was accepted. This is composited, obviously, but it was an eclipse of the moon, a lunar eclipse, full lunar eclipse. I think it's 2018. This looks like I was up in the mountains. I took this from basically my backyard. If you stand high enough in my yard, what I cropped out was the plumbing supply warehouse and the car dealership sign that is literally behind my backyard. But you know, it's made a lot of competitions. This one did too, an architectural abstract called Living in the Shadows. It's always been one of my favorites, but I kind of retire these after a while. You know, it's not that I tire of them, but I retire them from competitions. This one just got in. I've been doing a lot of bird photography, and this one, and again, what is it that's unique? Well, let's go back here. Remember Vivid Color, right? Vivid Color popped out. The others I had Emotions, the Abandoned Road. Here, the uniqueness, I think, of two snowy egrets that are doing a power dance. These are two males. There's a female egret just out of the picture. I watched them for a long time, and I know bird behavior pretty well. And I knew these two were going to have a disagreement over who she was going to nest with. And sure enough, they did. And this was just accepted last week into a competition in Lake Charles, Louisiana. So this will be in a national exhibit. I actually had two images accepted into that show. And here's some examples that didn't make it. I love this shot. I took this from it's called Hurrah Pass. It's in Utah. And, you know, Ansel Adams shot. It's never made a competition. I don't get it. But, you know, some of the ones that I've had make, I'm like, I can't believe that one made it. But this one's never made it. I've always found this kind of a fun shot. This is in a ghost town in Colorado called St. Elmo. I don't know why this has never made a competition. This one I love. I've entered this in so many competitions, probably the most that I've never made. It's called Flying Piano Keys. And actually what it is it's you're looking straight up in an office building, an atrium of an office building. And this is, these are suspended sculptures from there, but to me, they look like they were flying piano keys, and never made it. So again, I don't get it, but you know, so be it. So when you go to cafe, you get this is their homepage, and it'll come up with exhibits or shows, competitions, and it has them, sorts them by deadline date. Right now there's 224 that if you scroll all the way down, you'll come to. But I like that it's in reverse order. So these are all due today, right? Deadline is today. Here's one in California. Eligibility, it'll tell you here, regional. That probably means you have to be from California or Oregon or Washington, something like that. This one here, and these are just little summaries, and we'll get to more information about this. This one is it's an online exhibition, eligibility international. You might not want to start with the international ones. They can be tough. Here's the one that, lo and behold, came up. Look at this, landscape art, special event. Call type, exhibitions, that's competition. Eligibility, national. State, Colorado, etc. Well, when it says state, that means the event is in the state. So let's look at what this is. So you click on more info, and it goes to the full page that gives you all the information. This is called the show. It's called Landscape Art Special Event. It's by the Life in the West Art Gallery, which I happen to know is up north in a town called Broomfield. So deadline is today. Entry fee is $40. Okay. Minimum 1, maximum 3. And so here's, and I'm not going to go through all this, but if you just scroll, you'll see all the requirements, right? So it gives you a little bit more, but here's what I was looking for. This is nice. Not every place does this, but they say here, down right here, the objective of this exhibition is to showcase beautiful, so edgy is out, beautiful, intriguing, and inviting landscape artworks. Landscapes can include wildlife and people, but they're really looking for a landscape. If you have good landscape artworks of the West or beyond, I don't know what beyond means, you're invited to submit them for judging. Many people have traveled throughout the USA and have enjoyed beautiful areas in every state. Artwork that may cause a viewer to have wonderful memories of some area or influence a viewer to want to visit a location is what we're hoping to present at this event. That's actually pretty good that they do this. They even tell you the demographics of people likely to come to the show, which is nice. They only charge a 30% commission, kind of standard, I'd say. And they tell you works of 2D and 3D right down here, right? So this is an all medium show, which again, those are my favorite. Look at the rules. No glass coverings are allowed. That has nothing to do with the submission, but just so you know if you get accepted. So, so let's skip that and let me show you. I've got, and I'm going to have to log in. It took me out, but that's fine. Oops, what? Wait a minute. Oh, register. No, log in. Okay. And no big deal here. You're not going to be able to see my password. It's just password 1234 anyways. And then
credit card number.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm going to stop. Oh, wait a minute. Why is that? Maybe I did it too fast. Maybe I am a robot. Okay, there we go. So now I'm on my page, and what you do here is, and I'm not going to make this a tutorial on Cafe, but just know I've got, these are images from prior shows. You can archive them, etc. I've gone ahead and I've picked some that I think would be decent for this. So here's one. I thought, okay, is this inviting? Yes. This is in the San Juan Mountains of Colorado. I thought I've got to have some of Colorado, being from Colorado. Crystal Lake. And fall is coming up. So it's good to time it. If it's a gallery and they're really looking to sell, and galleries, it's more about selling. Art centers, it's more about exhibiting. So galleries want what will sell. And again, to match their style, whatever their genre is. So we're entering fall. So I'm thinking, I actually know this having talked to, I have my stuff in a gallery in Boulder, and they always want seasonal stuff, or whatever's coming up next. And here's, let me show you another one here I took. This is from, so I've got like 3, and sorry, this shows up small. On Jurors, this fills the screen, but for us, it's just a very small version because it's 1200 pixels and under the maximum size. And again, I use a Lightroom preset. This was taken in Death Valley. And so it's, I wanted to do something sort of a la Ansel Adams. So I think I will submit that. And I'll just show you one more here that I think would be kind of cool. This one I call San Juan Evening. So this is in the San Juan Mountains in southwest Colorado, near a town called Juryd, Colorado, and Telluride is right there too. So took that a couple of years ago. And this one didn't have any requirements about date to submit. So you would, you would just here add media, image, you would choose your file. I have another one here that I'm thinking of, which is Zabriskie Point. But I'm not going to go through that. You would add it to your portfolio. And then what you do is you actually apply to the call. And we go back to that. It'll have the legal stuff. This is no big deal. Be careful, read this. They've got standard stuff, so I can agree. What you do then is you choose the ones you want. So let's say I'm going to choose these 3. You save the application. I'd be ready to check out. I'm ready to check out. And this is where my credit card would show up, so we're not going to do that. But I am going to submit tonight. I can do a follow-up. I think it said there maybe 2 weeks is the submission or when they notification. They'll always tell you the notification date, which is nice. So you can kind of keep an eye open for that. And that's it. That's kind of the whole thing. I probably went a little too far, but any questions?
So Jamie had a question about, she's curious if you found, or if you've ever done it, or if you find it worthwhile to enter websites like Viewbug contests. Do you know anything about them?
Websites like what?
Viewbug is a website that I see them quite a bit. They're just, I guess they're just another form.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's one called like Motif Collective. And yeah, that's, again, kind of those can fulfill the reasons of why that I had. Right. So yeah, I mean, apply to anything that is legit, that can bring you joy for getting into. Once I found out a couple of those international, and by the way, I got accepted in and got, an award. And once I found out those were not totally legit, I took those off my list of accomplishments. But certainly, yeah, Motif Collective and ones like that, they're definitely good to apply to. Yeah.
I saw a question from Anne. She's curious if you have any comments regarding licensing of images. Do you have an opinion, or do you know anything about that?
Well, I've licensed images to an art consultant that approached me, saw some on Instagram, and I did research. Fortunately, I know an art curator really well whose wife is an art consultant, and I was able to run that organization by her. Found out she used to work for them. She didn't like them, but they were very legit. And so yeah, they, it's nice. You don't give up any copyright. It's very specific as to the use. It was a real estate developer who was building a high rise in downtown Denver. That was, their market was active people, outdoor people, and I had a couple of images of bicycles. They were actually abstract. It was they were really cool shadows of bicycles on pavement, and so a little edgy, but outdoorsy. And I licensed to them. They made prints of them for the development. And, I think it was like a 2-year license, which I had it expire. I have a good license agreement I came up with. And so I do recommend licensing. It can be a little tricky, but yeah, it's good.
Okay. I'm not okay. There's some nice comments in here.
Oh,
Scott's got a question about the snowy egret
yeah,
picture.
yeah.
He says,
It's the opposite, Scott. Good question. Really, I have 2 versions of that. One version, the water bottle is cloned out. That's the
okay,
one
I was going to say, give me 1 second. Let me get the question because
Oh, okay.
yeah, so
Yeah,
mostly
yeah, yeah.
somebody who doesn't see the chat.
Right.
The question Scott had was there was a snowy egret picture. Does the Gatorade bottle at the water's edge kill that for submission? So now go. There you go.
Okay. Yeah. So, like I said, I had 2 versions of that. And that would have, if that was in there, that would have been that distracting border patrol. Wasn't really on the border, but yeah. But this competition that it was accepted into said they reserve the right, no manipulation. And you'll find that in wildlife photography fairly common because, it's basically a form of photojournalism. You can't have a street scene and make it a composite. I mean, you can call it fine art, but it's not photojournalism. Well, this is wildlife photojournalism. It was a fight. And so I had to use the version that had the water bottle in it. So I could have been eliminated for the other version that had it out. So good question. And yeah, that looks funky. On the other hand, a lot of these places are looking at it from a conservation standpoint. I have one that I'm submitting to NANPA in their conservation category, and it's really sad. It's a wood duck, a beautiful wood duck that has a little plastic toy in its mouth. And I remember I was mortified. I took a couple shots. I didn't know what it was. I thought maybe it was a fish. And then I realized it was a little toy, and I was trying to, throw a rock at it. I put the camera away, obviously, and throw a rock at it so it would drop that. And so, yeah, that's the idea.
Okay. Paul, I don't see any other questions in here.
Okay.
I want to thank you. This was a lot of, I don't know if you've done this presentation before or not, but if you haven't, you put a lot of effort into it for us, and I appreciate it so much.
Sure.
I'm hoping that you've encouraged a few people in this room to go through their archives and maybe even look for a contest that they can go out and get motivated to do some photography to get something into a contest. All right, you guys can connect with Paul at paulmalinowskiphotography.com. If you're on Instagram, give him a follow at Paul Malinowski Photography. And I'll be sure to add his links to the show notes. Next week, Lori Cash will be here to share her presentation, The World of Wildlife Conservation Photography. Until next time, go out and create something beautiful, and I hope that we see you again soon.